The morning after the poisoning, the western quarters were tense. Servants whispered nervously as they scrubbed bowls and trays, terrified that suspicion might fall upon them. Maomao sat cross-legged on the veranda, sifting through the remains of the concubine's meal. On a low tray before her lay dishes of rice, vegetables, fish, and soup. Each had been set aside untouched after the incident. Maomao's sharp eyes narrowed as she picked up a sliver of fish with her chopsticks. She sniffed, then touched it to her tongue just enough for a faint taste. "Bitter," she muttered. But not in the fish itself. She dipped her finger into the soup. Again, the same bitterness lingered, faint but unmistakable. Carefully, she poured the liquid into a small glass vial and swirled it. A pale blue sheen formed on the surface, consistent with monkshood derivative. Someone sprinkled it after the dishes were prepared, she concluded. One of the eunuchs paled. But even the kitchen staff, Maomao shook her head. No, if it were added in the kitchen, all dishes would show the same level of bitterness. But only 2 have been touched, which means... She looked toward the servants who carried food from kitchen to chamber. It was slipped in after the meal left the kitchen. Her gaze swept the attendants. Some fidgeted nervously, others bowed too deeply. Maomao's eyes sharpened, but she said nothing further for now. Later, Jinshi summoned her privately. He stood by the window, light casting his figure in sharp lines. "Your assessment?" he asked. Maomao folded her arms. This wasn't an attempt to kill. The dosage was carefully measured. Too much and the concubine would have died. Too little and it would have gone unnoticed. Whoever planned this wanted her to collapse, to stir fear, but not to escalate to death. Jinshi's gaze hardened. Meaning the true target may not even be the concubine. Exactly. Maomao leaned against the wooden pillar. This is a warning, a test. Perhaps to you, perhaps to the western quarters as a whole. It may even be intended to gauge how I respond. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Jinshi smiled faintly, though his eyes held no mirth. If that is the case, then they will soon regret provoking us. Maomao sighed, muttering under her breath, "Easy for you to say, dressed like a prince in a storybook." He tilted his head. What was that? Nothing. Despite herself, Maomao felt the stirrings of unease. She had seen poisons used in the pleasure district to kill rivals or control clients. But this was different. This was politics disguised as medicine, power disguised as sickness, and it was far more dangerous. That night, when the palace halls grew quiet, Maomao returned secretly to the kitchens. With a lantern in one hand, she examined shelves of jars and bottles. Her nose twitched as she opened each container, cataloging their scents and textures. Suddenly, she froze. One small jar, tucked behind sacks of rice, carried a faint residue, its scent unmistakable, monkshood, diluted but potent. "Found you," she whispered. But as she lifted it to the light, she noticed something else. The jar was old, its edges chipped. It wasn't from the kitchen's regular stock. Someone had planted it here. A false trail. Maomao's lips curled in irritation. Clever. They want me chasing shadows. Still, she tucked the jar into her satchel. A planted clue was a clue nonetheless. Whoever had staged this wanted her to think the culprit careless, which meant they already knew she would investigate. That realization chilled her. The poisoner was not just sending a message to the concubine. They were sending one directly to her. To see how Maomao unravels this web of deception and confronts the hidden mastermind. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you won't miss the next thrilling episode of the Apothecary Diaries.